All right, this is the Congress Section C lecture. Our prioritized standards, Government Civics 13. Objectively, we're going to analyze how a bill becomes a law. Each bill, which is a proposed law presented to the House or the Senate for consideration, is actually introduced in the House or the Senate and then given a number, which corresponds to which measure during that congressional term that measure represents. So if it's something as the 2001st measure, its number would be 2001. A bill originating in the Senate receives the prefix HR, as is seen here, and one originating in the Senate receives the prefix S. So if you see S, it means it came from the Senate. If you see HR, it means it came from the House of Representatives. Now, all bills for raising revenue must originate in the House of Representatives. However, bills not involving raising revenue may actually originate from either House of Congress. So if it deals with money, it has to come through the House of Representatives. Otherwise, anywhere is fine. After receiving a bill's first reading, either the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate or President pro tem of the Senate in the VP's absence, depending on which place it came from. For our example, we'll pretend it came from the House of Representatives. Refers it to a standing committee, which is a permanent committee to which bills in a specified subject matter area are in fact referred. Now, the House currently has 20 different standing committees. They also have 3 select committees. Each House representative normally gets between 1 to 2 different standing committees, and they might be on 4 different subcommittees. The Senate currently has 16 standing committees and 2 select and 1 special committee. Each senator normally gets between 2 to 3 standing committees and are usually on up to 5 subcommittees. Why do they have more, Mr. Booth? Well, because there's fewer members of the Senate, so therefore each individual member has to do more work. The bulk of the work of Congress is actually done by the committees, as most bills get their most thorough consideration in committees with members of both houses regularly respecting the decisions and recommendations made by committees. So this to help make it things function more efficiently and divide the work more. The committee sizes range from anywhere between 6 to 50 members. Each house usually establishes select committees, which are panels set up for some type of specific purpose for a limited time period. And then they will investigate whatever that matter is and then report back to the whole House or Senate, depending on which one we're talking about. Once a bill is referred to a standing committee, the committee chairperson will assign it to a subcommittee for study, hearings, revisions, and then final approval. The committee chairperson decides when their committee will meet, which bills they will take up, whether they will hold public hearings, and what witnesses the committee should call. Now, the choice of committee chairperson is strictly determined by seniority rule. So you have to be in the majority party, and then whoever's been there the longest, they are in charge. If the bill makes it out of the subcommittee, and they don't all make it out of subcommittee, it goes back to the full committee for more hearings and revisions. Now, when the bill is reported to the floor, the committee chairperson usually manages the debate, and they steer it possibly toward the final passage. Bills making it out of committee in the House are actually sent to the Rules Committee to set special conditions for debate and amendments, because there are very strict limitations on what kind of debate you can have in the House. Senate doesn't have that step. After making it out of committee, the bill is ready for floor action, which means it's sent back to the full House or full Senate, depending on which one we're talking about. The bill is debated and voted on. If the bill does not pass, it goes back to committee, which basically ends its chances at becoming a law. So that's the kiss of death if it gets sent back to committee. Now, if the bill passes, it's actually sent to the other House of Congress and has to go through the entire process again. Now, the major difference between the House and the Senate at this point is actually how floor debate is conducted, which is very restricted in the House. The House has strict limitations on the amount of debate. For instance, no member may hold the floor for more than 1 hour without unanimous consent, which almost never happens. The Speaker also has the power to force any member who strays from the subject to give up their time on the floor. Also, at any time, any member may motion for a vote on the issue, and if such a motion is invoked and passed, there's only 40 more minutes of further debate that are allowed. So even though there's 435 members, they might not all actually even get an opportunity to discuss an issue. Now, floor debate in the Senate is actually almost completely unrestrained. So if you love talking, you probably want to be in the Senate. Now, although there is a two-speech rule, which basically says on any given question on the same legislative day, you can only give two speeches. Generally speaking, a senator can generally speak for as long as they like, and they do not even have to stay on subject for the entire time. Some senators in the minority actually employ a stalling tactic where they seek to delay or prevent Senate action on a measure, which is known as a filibuster. Now, a filibuster is an attempt by a senator to so monopolize the Senate floor and its time that the Senate must either drop the bill or change it in some manner that might be acceptable to the minority group. Now, Strom Thurmond, at one point, he did a filibuster that lasted for 24 hours and 18 minutes in his attempt to stall the Civil Rights Act of 1957. There's been many other long filibusters, but that's the longest. Huey Long, he had a famous filibuster. He spoke for over 15 hours in 1935. During his filibuster, he actually read from the Washington Telephone Directory, and he also gave recipes. Now, in recent years, the tradition of the talking filibuster has been replaced by a non-talking filibuster, where essentially a senator, usually in the minority party, will state their intention on launching a filibuster against a bill or a motion, which basically halts any activity on that matter. So if you've noticed, there's been like a spike in filibusters in recent years. That's when they started using the non-talking filibuster, where they just say, we're just not going to do anything because I just don't like it. Now, a filibuster can only be prematurely ended with a cloture vote of 3/5 of the senators. So that means currently you need 60 senators all to agree to end a filibuster. After the cloture vote passes, you can only have 30 more hours of floor time before you actually have a vote on whatever the issue is. Now, before a bill can be sent to the president, each house must pass it in identical form. If the two houses pass differing versions, and oftentimes they do, a conference committee is actually created to iron out the differences in the bill. Both houses actually send members to resolve the differences between the conflicting versions. Following the work of the conference committee, the House and the Senate vote on final passage. Now, there's another type of committee that's called joint committees. Joint committees are committees composed of members of both chambers of Congress. So bills actually originating here need no conference committee because basically both parties were working on it the whole time, so they are going to be identical, so no need for that extra step. So bills originating here need no conference committee because not necessary, like I said. Now, most joint committees are actually permanent groups that serve on a regular basis. There's currently 4 different joint committees. Now, if passing in both houses, the bill is then sent to the president. Once a bill is sent to the president may sign the bill, which makes it law, veto the bill, which sends it back to the House where it originated from, together with the president's objections to it, or they can not act on the measure at all. Now, if not acting on it within 10 days of receiving it, the bill actually becomes law. So that's 10 days, not counting Sundays, even with the president not signing it. Now, if not acting on it within 10 days, again, not counting Sundays, of receiving it, but Congress adjourns its session during that 10-day time, the bill is actually vetoed. This is actually considered a pocket veto. If the president vetoes the bill, it is returned to Congress. The veto can be overridden by a 2/3 majority vote of both houses of Congress. So if 2/3 majority agree, magic, we have a law even if the president doesn't agree to it. Although if they get anything less than a 2/3 majority vote, Rest in peace, Bill. An informal yet still important aspect of lawmaking includes special interest groups and the media. Special interest groups represent people or organizations with common concerns by pressuring government officials to enact legislation and policies that are favorable to its causes. Special interest groups often conduct research and produce technical information to advance their cause. Information created by interest groups is then given to government officials and the media to further their cause. As these groups have a vested interest, policymakers must evaluate its credibility and validity because, again, they do have an interest involved. Special interest groups send representatives, known as lobbyists, to the national capital and also the many state capitals to actively engage in lobbying, which we mentioned before. That is the organized process of pressuring government officials to enact favorable legislation or policies. Lobbyists contact government officials to present information from the interest group that they represent. Lobbyists frequently talk with members of the press, hoping media coverage will gain public support for their cause. Now, the information lobbyists offer to lawmakers proves valuable as it provides not readily available information and research. Lobbyists sometimes testify at congressional hearings. Some lobbyists even help to draft legislation. Similarly, the media can influence public opinion on possible legislation through the type of coverage that they produce and present for the general public. All right, that concludes Congress, Section C lecture. Our prioritized standard again, Government Civics 13. Objectively, now you can analyze how a bill becomes a law.